Okay, so like everyone's talking about crypto these days, right?
It's definitely a hot topic.
But it's almost impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, I get that. There's just so much information out there.
Exactly. Podcasts, articles, videos. It's overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here, right?
To do the deep dives.
Yeah.
To cut through the noise. So you ready to dive into another one today?
Always up for it. Hit me with it.
This one's interesting. It's a new podcast.
Oh.
Well, new might not be totally accurate.
I'm intrigued. What's the catch?
Well, it's called the Crypto Deep Dive Podcast.
Catchy. But that name sounds kind of familiar. What makes this one different?
This one's going all in on AI.
AI. Interesting. Like AI-generated content or?
AI hosts. They're using AI personalities to host the show.
Whoa. Okay, that's a new one.
Right. I was like, hold on, what? When I first heard about it.
Yeah, definitely different. So what's the thinking there? Why AI hosts?
Well, from what I've read, it's all about combating information overload.
Makes sense. We just talked about that, how overwhelming it can be.
Exactly. So they're trying something new. They're betting that AI hosts, well, they think it might cut through the noise better.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. People are always looking for new ways to consume information.
Right. And maybe AI is the answer, but, there's always that question.
Of whether it will actually work.
Exactly. Like, will it be engaging? Or will it feel like, listening to a robot read the news?
I think that's the million-dollar question, right? Because they're onto something with the information overload problem, but can they pull it off?
Yeah. It all comes down to execution. So how are they trying to make these AI hosts engaging? They're really playing up this whole conversation angle.
Conversation. Okay, tell me more about that.
So the idea is that these AI hosts won't just be reading headlines. They're supposed to have, like, distinct personalities.
Okay.
And they'll actually, like, debate the news with each other.
Oh, interesting. So, like, back and forth banter, different perspectives.
Exactly. They're trying to replicate the way people actually talk about this stuff, make it more relatable.
That's a really interesting approach because you're right. The traditional way of delivering news can be kind of dry.
Totally. And honestly, I think they might be onto something here.
Well, there's actually some research to support this idea. Studies have shown that our brains process information better when it's presented in a conversational format.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, we're hardwired for storytelling. We remember things better when they're part of a narrative.
That makes total sense. A conversation is way more memorable than just, like, bullet points of information.
Exactly.
Okay. But there's another thing about this podcast, this deep dive that I got to mention.
What's that?
The episodes are only 10 minutes long.
10 minutes? Wow. That's short.
Yeah, I know. That was my first thought, too. Like, is that even possible?
Right. Can you really dive deep into anything in 10 minutes?
That's the big question. Crypto is complicated.
It is. There's a lot to unpack.
So, yeah, I'm curious to see how they handle that. But I guess that's part of their whole strategy, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly going for a specific audience with that format.
Right? Busy professionals. People who want the headlines but don't have time for a 2-hour podcast every day.
Exactly. And that 10-minute format could actually work in their favor. People are more likely to listen to a whole episode if it's short and sweet.
True. No commitment issues there.
Yeah.
They actually argued that this format might actually be better for learning. Like, you'll retain more information because it's short and focused.
I could see that. Think about how much information we just skim over these days. We're constantly bombarded with stuff.
Right, and we're just scrolling.
Exactly. So maybe, just maybe, shorter, more focused content is the way to go.
It's an interesting thought. And honestly, I'm kind of rooting for them. The amount of information out there is overwhelming.
It really is.
So having some kind of guide, someone to curate and frame the information, it's invaluable these days.
Makes you think, what would the perfect news experience even look like, How do we learn effectively in a world where there's just so much coming at us all the time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Something to think about.